Oh, wait. Oh, I'm in. Hey, Chris. I was fucking wrestling with TikTok on the other screen. Okay. Um, we're going. We're going. We're going. Okay. Um, I hope my fan is not too loud, but it's hot as fuck. So that's going. Um, yeah. Hell yeah. White noise. That's what I call my genre of music. Um, um, cool. So let's see. We can get a couple of people in here. Um, DNC was recent. Was recently. It was. Um, uh, Chris, we've actually talked about it a little in the chat, in the group chat. Um, but yeah, it was a shit show. It's incredible how yeah, funding the genocide still happening, like firmly still happening. Not even like stringing us along anymore. Just fuck you. This is happening. Um, this is okay here. Um, yeah, it's insane. The the uncommitted movement Palestinian speaker situation was ridiculous. Like apparently been in talks with the DNC or the Kamala team or whatever about having a Palestinian American speaker at the DNC, literally for like 5 minutes. They might have even lowered the ask to like 2 minutes at one point. Um, and I'm gonna see if I can let me open a new window. Because what is this woman's name? I think it was Rua. Yeah, Georgia state rep. So she's a sitting Georgia state representative, Palestinian American, chair of the Swifty caucus. Great. Um, but so this is an elected Democrat, first of all. She uh, was actually going to endorse. I gotta put this up. She was going to endorse Kamala Harris in the speech. She is like already um, in an official capacity endorsed Kamala Harris, and she was going to endorse her in the speech, but just emphasize the importance of the ceasefire. I don't even know if she was going to say arms embargo, but maybe at least hint at it. Um, and this was denied, which is great. It's just, oh yeah, you can be. It's like the perfect victim complex, right? It's like how Palestinians are, I mean, obviously it's related, but like it's uh, Palestinians are like not allowed to fucking call themselves victims anymore because they did October 7th, right? Um, because if you fight back, you're not a good victim, right? They say this, Zionists say this shit. There's the famous Norm Finkelstein clip where he's yelling at college students. It's great. But he gets a comment from someone that was like, well, the Jews never took up arms against the Germans. Now, for people who love to say, "Oh, this situation is not the same as that situation," that sure is like a real bullshit argument because, if we're talking about German Jews and really any European Jews at the time of the Holocaust, um, yeah, no, they wouldn't have taken up arms before the Holocaust. Like, I mean, maybe it would have made sense to, and maybe they did. I'm not a fucking historian, but honestly, like, no, we don't hear about that because they were Germans, they were Poles, they were French. And they lived in these places, and there were pogroms against Jews. Like there was a lot of uh, anti-Semitism in these places. Uh, so like, it would have been justified, I think, if Jews had, and if Jews did take up arms against their attackers at some point. Now, we do know that there were events like the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising in um, in Warsaw, uh, where they were fighting back against the Nazis when they started. I think it was when they started to realize like where people were going on the trains, and they started to realize that like the camps were a thing, much like they are in Israel today. Uh, that they fought back. So yeah, I mean that was a mini tangent. Like, but that's what I mean is that you even if you're a perfect victim, um, like when the Palestinians did the March of Return in 2018, uh, like they still got shot. A lot of them still got killed, disabled permanently. And this woman is an elected Democrat who was going to endorse Kamala Harris and just wanted to speak to the issue that's very personal to her instead of, only getting hints of it from other speakers who are not directly connected to it, frankly. And, you know, we can give credit where it's due. I forget who the people were. Maybe it might have even been like a hostage family or something, an Israeli hostage family, who did mention like the Palestinians are suffering greatly, under Israel's response to October 7th, and we need to do more for them. Whatever it was, they're allowed to say it. But like, if you're Palestinian, you're not allowed to go up and advocate for yourself. Even if you're a woman from fucking Georgia who's a sitting Georgia state rep. It's fucking insane. So they refused it. The uncommitted delegates were staging a sit-in right outside the convention center. And, nothing came of it. It's just there's the Democratic Party is making clear, and the Republican Party, to be fair, like our government is making clear over and over that there is no popular participation in this system. You don't have a say, and you don't matter unless you just kind of go along with what the rest of us are doing. What the power structure is already committed to. So yeah, it's insane. Like, so I don't know. I think people, we need to start thinking about what comes next, because the standard tactics. I mean, it might be a matter of just more time committed to these things. Like, um, it takes forever. I mean, like, how long was it uh, between the real uptick of the Vietnam War protests to when the U.S. actually pulled out of Vietnam? Um, a decade, like, it's not easy. Uh, and it's not the only protesting and doing this stuff is not the only way, but like, yeah, we got to just, I don't know, got to keep at it. I think, luckily we didn't see um, a lot of police violence uh, at the DNC. Might have just been that there weren't, the uncommitted movement wasn't there in that many numbers, to be quite honest. So I don't know, but uh, we can't be cautious and careful about this. So I want to talk about something else that was happening on Twitter. Twitter. Um, oh my God! Perfect. 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 Okay. All right. So if you're not familiar with this person in this image here, am I on? Okay, got it. Uh, this is ContraPoints, uh, aka Natalie Wynn. She's uh, YouTube uh, star. She's, I guess you could call her like a video essayist. She has kind of these like high production value, uh, like uh, elaborate sort of costumes and like settings, um, where that lend a lot of credence to like the bigger like political points she's making. Like that's just like a basic. She's good. Is what I'm trying to say. She's like good at what she does. Um, you know, I I think she's leaning a lot more kind of lib these days, or like the left's passed her by a little bit. But whatever it is, this screenshot from one of her recent videos is really, this makes the round so much now on Twitter. She's talking about the left. She says they don't want victory, they don't want power, they want to endlessly critique power. And there's a huge, huge problem with this, because while there is an argument to be made here, um, that there are certain steps the left isn't willing to take yet, or that uh, some leftists want to jump the gun, and we just don't have the numbers or the ability yet. But the problem here is victory. What is victory and what is power? Because under the power structure we live in, we don't get to have victory as the left. Our project is to, and maybe this is a criticism, but like our project is too big to like to measure in like, well, we the left has been trying to do stuff since 2016 and it didn't work. And it's like, well, no, like, yeah, we need to work on these smaller things, to get a bigger victory. But still, it's like the big victory is like overthrowing capitalism. You don't just do that. It's like almost impossible. Um, so when she talks about victory and power, what she means is joining the ranks of the current power structure, right? And because this is what liberals talk about. It's, well, the left doesn't even win anything. Like, look, you have to get in power. If you, what is the thing that fucking annoying Gen Z lib said? Olivia Juliana, is that her name? Said, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, which is like such a telling statement, but that's what it is. And it's like, well, yeah, man, the whole problem is we don't have a seat at the table unless we just play ball. But then we're not accomplishing what we want to do with power. So what's the fucking point if you're just going to be like AOC about it? Who, you know, I used to have a more of an issue with like kind of reflexive AOC haters, but now it's especially with her comments about Gaza at the DNC. I'm like, you're playing the fucking game. Like, I was glad she was in there, even when, you know, over the past several years since she got in, I've moved further to the left. I've started to see, you know, less of a path through the way she was doing it. I was like, yeah, but it's better that she's there than Joe Crowley, right? But now it's like, is it? She's not even saying shit. Like she's not even speaking to the issues. And I should have read this person's caption before because they said it so much more succinctly. Those people who keep posting this stupid screenshot don't want victory or power or even to critique power. They want even criticism of the ruling class. What the hell just happened? They want criticism of the ruling class to stop. They want the world to be as quiet as the mass graves their masters are piling up around us. That's exactly it. That's it. Because you see us throwing darts from outside the Democratic Party. But when we try to get people elected within the Democratic Party who are more amenable to us, not even like, you know, real like far leftists or something, but when we elect Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush, AIPAC, the power structure, aided by the inaction of the Democratic Party power structure, dumps hundreds of millions of dollars into defeating those people in primaries. Right? And we've had like, you know, major primary upsets the way that like AOC did. I think Summer Lee had a similar thing. And so good, but like, that's what we're up against, you know? It's posted by the kind of people who deliberately sabotaged Corbyn's leadership and then smugly said he never wanted to win anyway. He just wants to tear the Labour Party down. Yeah, exactly. This is exactly right. Oh. Over in the UK, a big centrist became a meme recently by posting, "It's nice, isn't it? The quiet," following the recent election of a new neoliberal government. So this is spot on. It's just fucking nuts, dude. So I wanted to toot my own horn just a little bit here. All right. So Kate Willett, she's a comedian, and becoming quite a political commentator. I see her Um, I follow her, but I see her stuff on Twitter all the time. She's like uh, a big poster these days, and she's good. Um, so she's responding to this person who I think this is, this is as far back as we need to go in the thread, but like most voters straight up don't give a shit about Gaza and you're just going to have to get over it, is what this guy, Carl Hungus, said. Okay. So Kate quotes it and says, it's very weird. More Dems don't see a cognitive dissonance between we must not elect Trump, he's a racist, and we are racist, live with it. Are we going to stand against racism or not? If Trump embodies U.S. values, it'll be no surprise if he gets elected. Right. Are we going to stand against racism or not? Because this is the thing. It's, well, oh, you just want to critique power. It's like, no. Well, as long as power is fucking racist, yeah, I'm going to critique it. I'm going to. I'm going to critique the fucking racism. I'm sorry, Natalie. But yeah, power and victory to me doesn't mean joining these fucking racists. Doesn't mean joining these people who are saying fuck you and the thing that's important to you, we don't care, and you have to get over it. Sounds like I need my own party, But so then this person, Democrat to the end, great. Don't give a shit about Gaza is not the same thing as being racist. Many voters of all political stripes care more about what's happening here than in Gaza, Israel, Ukraine, Sudan, or anywhere else. Yeah, so what this handsome gentleman, radicalized me, had to say in response, I quote tweeted her. I said, it is racist. But even putting that aside, we don't believe you actually care about the U.S. Right? She said, we care more about what's happening here than in other places. I don't believe that because you can't even draw the connection that our government will spend endless money and throw process to the wind for imperialist projects. I'm referring, of course, to like Biden will go around Congress to send more aid to Israel. Will ignore U.S. law and international law to send more aid to Israel. But they'll never fucking bend the rules for you. Right? While doing nothing to meet the needs of U.S. citizens. We have record-breaking homelessness, and Dems are doing raids. Look into Gavin Newsom in California right now. And promising to, quote, lift regulations. That's all they said about fucking housing at the DNC. BT dubs. LGBTQ people are under attack, and Dems pass COSA. This is the Kids Online Safety Act, which is a load of shit. It's an anti-trans bill. And the Biden administration quietly passed or removed language in U.S. code, I believe, that would prevent red states from continuing crackdowns on trans youth. Okay? Rogue ICE abusing immigrants, and Dems want more enforcement. Right? They have a right-wing bill, a right-wing immigration bill that they tried to pass so they could be like, look, the Republicans won't even pass the... And then, but what are they going to do when the Dems are back in power? We're going to pass the right-wing immigration bill. Like, great, you fucking asshole. You've accomplished nothing. Cops kill more than ever, and Dems heap money and praise on them. You're not serious. I think it was 2023, maybe, was like the deadliest year for like police killings, police killing people, killing civilians. I don't know if it's ever, but certainly like recently. And they're talking about, what did Biden said, like 100,000 more police, or like $100 million to police, or whatever the fuck. Oh, and when it comes to reproductive rights for women et al., see what I did there? I solved the birthing person crisis. I, I, I cited women and people who can get pregnant by saying et al. I'm a civil rights genius. Of course, Kamala promises to codify, just like Biden and Obama before her. It's been 2 years since Dobbs, and Biden did fuck all, only floating SCOTUS reform on his way out of office. Dems don't give a shit. You know, it's abortion is a fundraising tactic to them. And I just don't see a real interest in even getting these like little wins anymore. Like, do you notice how since 2016 we've gone from oh, well, we're going to do incremental change. That's how real change happens. You got to be slow and steady to win the race. That's how we're going to do it. So don't go with your like crazy Bernie shit. That's never going to work. Just follow us. Hillary's very accomplished. She's very smart. You might not like everything about her, but she'll do some of this stuff, in steps. Of course, they were mostly lying then, but the message went from that to then the Biden, like, kind of like pretending a little more to commit to some Bernie policies, but also once he got elected, there's the famous Zoom call where he yells at black activists and just giving up on all this shit, the parliamentarian, all of that shit, right? It was just like all these performative acts of like, we can't do it. And Democrats love to say like, oh, they haven't had a pro-choice filibuster-proof majority. They haven't had that since, who knows when. But like, they didn't quite have it under Obama. They didn't have it under Biden. And so they're like, wow, you can't. And my response to that is always like, well, let me just finish this point. Like the Biden, like, oopsie, we're trying, but oops. And now it's nothing. Now it's gotten to, you will get nothing and you will shut the fuck up and you will like it. That's where this has gone in the past, almost decade. If you count like, Bernie and Trump, and Hillary announcing in 2015, we're coming up on a decade, folks. But yeah, I'm sorry. My brain is like really, really slow these days. I think I got a little bit of the long COVID. A little bit of the long COVID. Long in the COVID. But yeah. So Democrats will often say this, like, well, they don't have a filibuster-proof majority, and they haven't had that. Okay. So like, you're telling me with 58, 59 senators, Obama still couldn't do anything. Just couldn't really do fucking anything. Yeah, that's how they explain why Obamacare sucks. Except when they want to say that Obamacare is great, then they say, we have universal health care. Stop complaining, Bernie bro. But yeah, so they don't have a filibuster-proof majority. I'm like, I don't care. Get it done. Like, what is this fucking like pundit brain nonsense where everyone is like, well, the number of boo 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 boo, and you have to be like this to win in West Virginia. Boo boo, Joe Manchin. Like, I don't care. Fucking get it done. Like we hear the Biden touting his like deal making skills and shit, when it turns out that he's just the most right wing Democrat. So he's been working with the right wing the whole time. Like, he's been working with the Republicans. He's not like making brilliant deals where, you know, okay, there's a couple of trade offs, but we got the thing done because, you know, I'm a great negotiator. Ridiculous. Yeah. So it's like, you're telling me you can't like codify Roe under Obama or pass a public option because you only have 58 favorable senators as opposed to 60. So remember that when they're like, we only have 52, or we, you know, like we only have 49. It's not going to work. We can't do it. We just need to elect more Democrats. I'm like, okay, so we got to elect more Democrats who agree with us, right? Who want to pass this bill codifying Roe or pass this public option or whatever. And they're like, can't be too picky. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So we got to just elect any old asshole with a D next to his name. And I'm like, okay, so how are we going to get the thing? And then they're like, well, fuck off and die, I guess. Like, it's insane. Telling me that you can't whip 2 party members is not like the win you think it is, you know? Fucking do it. Get it done. Robert Reich, the Treasury Secretary under, Labor, probably Labor, Secretary under Clinton, once said, I think this was, you know, during Biden's term, and how they couldn't get the $15 minimum wage because of Manchin and cinema. And Robert Reich on Twitter, I remember he was like, Bill Clinton and I got the minimum wage raised with like a Republican House and Senate. It was like, it was our job to get it done, so we got it done, you know. And I'd be interested to hear more about, like, specifically what did they do and whatever. But it's fine, you know. And people will come back with this shit like, well, the Republican Party now is very different from the Republican Party then. Like, shut up. They impeached Clinton over a blowjob. Like, there was a, like Sam Cedar always says, there was a cottage industry of, you know, takedowns and rumor mills of the Clintons, you know. It was nuts, really. Like, I was a kid, I wasn't like super aware of it at the time, but like, if you look back, it was nuts. The Republicans were fucking nuts. Newt Gingrich is not like a moderate guy. You know, Dennis Hastert is the longest serving House Speaker, I believe, and massive pedophile. Republican. So don't tell me, oh, well, the Republicans were just more agreeable back then. No. Something different is happening. Like, there's a different world of politics today. That's not just about like, oh, Republicans are crazier now. Like, no, I'm sorry. Because, like, the minimum wage was raised last in I think it was 2009 under Bush, like in the last 20 days of his administration. Um, I'd have to check that, but I think that's when it was. So then you can argue maybe, okay, that's why Obama didn't do it like in his first year. It was just raised. Fine, I guess. Um, but oh no, there's a Tea Party. I'm sorry, the Tea Party is just like the uh, you know, 2000s equivalent of the Republican majority of 1996. I'm sorry, it's just the same fucking thing. And if Bill Clinton could handle it and Obama couldn't, it's like a skill issue, or it's just the party moving more and more in the right wing direction, which really began in earnest under Clinton. Uh, if we're going to be honest, but he still raised the minimum wage, and plenty of Republicans raised the minimum wage. I'm pretty sure. I again, we can check this, but like, I think every president has raised the minimum wage since it was enacted. Um, let's see this minimum wage by year in the U.S. 1955 to present. Okay, so it was created in the. Oh my god. Oh my god. Please leave me alone. Okay. Um, and this is from infoplease.com. Do we want to try for a better, just for appearances even, um, better source? All right, Department of Labor.gov. Um, okay, so I don't know why the other one was counting from 1955, because it was raised between 38 and 55. So you can see here, right? 1938, we're right in the nougaty center of the FDR presidency. We're halfway through his 4 terms. All right, it begins at 25 cents an hour. I don't know. Maybe that was great at the time. I don't know. But you know what? Let's hold on. I'm a little ADHD. I'm sorry, but like, let's try this. I want to see. Let's do. What have I done? Um, the Consumer Price Index Inflation Calculator. All right, so in January 1938, 25 cents has a buying power of 554 in 2024. Okay. Now, I'd imagine that went along a lot further back then. Um, yeah, because what there's actually a problem with the way we calculate inflation, because I think it was under Reagan that we stopped incorporating the housing market into that or something. This is a whole tangent, but it's fucked, man. So yeah, 554 is not getting you shit now, but anyway, you can see big increases too over time, right? So what's happening in the beginning? 25 to 30 to 40. All right. Goes up to 30 in a year, goes up to 40 6 years later. Small increases, and then 75 in 1950. That's almost doubled. So that's why when people say like, "Oh, you can't more than double the minimum wage, it's going to fucking create crazy inflation." Fuck off. We have crazy inflation, and we've doubled it before. So suck my balls. But Anyway, let's look at this. So I think, yeah, we can look at this and see that just about every president has done it, right? So FDR, um, 45, probably still FDR. 1950, Truman raises it, right? 56, Eisenhower raises it. 61, 63, um, uh, John F. Kennedy raises it, all right? 64, 65, 67, 68. LBJ raises it. 69, February 1st. All right? A couple weeks in office, Nixon raises it. All right? All right, so Nixon again, Nixon, 70, May 74 might have still been Nixon, but by 75, that's Ford. 76 is Ford. 77 is Ford. And then Carter. January 1981, still Carter. Oh, okay. I'll give you, we'll grant this. Reagan didn't raise it. Okay? All right? So, Obama, Trump, and Biden, just as good as Reagan. Right? See, we got a nice gap. January 1st, 1981 to April 1st, 1990. So, first increase of my lifetime is under Bush 1. Okay. Then Bush 1 again. And then 96. Here it is. Clinton. Right? Clinton. And then 07, 08, 09. All Bush. This is fucking pathetic. This is pathetic. Like, can you imagine if fucking Trump raises it? Like, if Trump gets back in office and raises it, we're fucked. Like, the Democrats are fucked. You can't let Republicans outflank you on shit. Like, I could see the Republicans doing like a smaller increase. Like, they would raise it to, a little over $10 or something. I'm not saying this is likely either, but like, I could see them doing that, and then, just pointing that out forever, just being like, look, Democrats didn't do it for you. Like, this is insane. 2009, dude. Like, how old are you if you're born in 2009? You're 15. You can almost, you're a few years from being able to vote. If you were born the last time the minimum wage was increased. And again, the longest gap before that was 81 to 90. It was 9 years of Reagan. It's fucked, man. Unbelievable. So let's do this. I want to see some more CPI calculations. So 725 in 2009 is what today? See, $10.80. So the bare minimum would be to raise the minimum wage with the consumer price index. All right? Because this is not like the CPI inflation does not come from like paying workers more. It just doesn't. Right? So that would be the bare minimum. And that's what I'm saying. Like, the fucking field is so wide open for Republicans to come in and do the bare fucking minimum to outflank Democrats and say it's 10, we're raising it to 1080. And no taxes on tips. No tax on tips. All right? So how about this? Let's look at the number one song. We're gonna BuzzFeed the shit out of this, all right? I want to know number one song on July 24th, 2009. It's I Got a Feeling by the Black Eyed Peas. Oh, man. That is dead center in my college career. I got a feeling. Ooh, ooh. Unbelievable, man. Like, oh my God. So funny. I Got a Feeling by the Black Eyed Motherfucking Peas. Jesus tit. $10.80. So the minimum wage, has the minimum wage ever been enough? That's what I'm interested in. Let me see if someone's like written about this. I mean, sure, this is true, I guess. An ever-shrinking number of workers in the U.S. are paid the federal minimum wage, and a growing chorus of unions, economists, and employers agree it's out of step with today's economic reality. Only 141,000 U.S. workers were paid the minimum per hour in 2022. But, like, I wonder how much of this is fucking gig work and shit, right? It's like fraudulent 1099 status where they don't have to fucking pay you a wage. And if you do the math, you might be making less than the minimum wage. Federal minimum wage has been $7.25 for 15 years. How the election might change that. Shut up, CNBC. Okay. This is recent. Okay, interesting. How the election may change that. Key points. The federal minimum wage has not increased from, yeah, we know that. On the campaign trail, Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris has said that needs to change. Okay. While some states and companies have enacted their own higher pay thresholds, some say it's time to raise the national minimum pay rate. I mean, yeah, this is how it goes usually with like a lot of stuff in the U.S. Like, yeah, states and companies will start to enact these things because of labor unions and fucking activists. And then, you know, finally it comes to a point where it's like, okay, yeah, this is the way the nation's going, and we should just make it a standard. All right. On the campaign trail, when I'm president, we'll continue to fight for working families, raise minimum wage to what? Eliminate taxes on tips, which is it sounds good. But I think that I think tipped workers just need to be paid more. Like the actual like federal or state minimum wage needs to apply to them because it's such a load of crap. But yeah, this eliminate tax on tips thing is a little bit of a smokescreen, as I understand it, because I think um, uh, that's very easily manipulated by like hedge funds and shit, uh, who can just kind of reclassify some of their, fees that they get paid for um, managing hedge funds and uh, managing people's funds, um, and they can just reclassify like, okay, this, instead of saying like you owe us $4,000, they can say um, it's 3,000 with a $1,000 tip, or so, like apparently you can just do shit like that. So, I would imagine that's why Trump is saying eliminate taxes on tips, and whether Kamala Harris wants it or not, still what's going to happen if Democrats do it. It's not like Democrats are going to put some fucking mechanism in here so that hedge funds can't manipulate their taxes. Come on. Many states have enacted minimum pay rates higher than the federal, yet 20 states have wages no higher. They include some of the worst states. The federal minimum wage for tipped workers is $2.13 per hour. What a fucking load of shit. Harris has not said how high she wants to raise the minimum wage. Wow, it's just like all her other policies. Though she has praised states that have raised the rate to at least 15 per hour. Okay. Uh, uh, oh, I love this little squirrely sentence. Congressional Democrats in 2021 tried to raise the federal minimum wage to $15 per hour as part of a broader COVID relief package. However, those efforts failed. Ready? After it was determined that the change could not be included in legislation handled through a one-party majority. That is a load of bullshit. After it was determined that the change could not be included in legislation handled through a one-party majority. What the fuck are you saying? There's nothing to do with one party. It has to do with votes. So what happened if you are not familiar with the details? This COVID relief package, Build Back Better, Build Back Better. Bernie and some of his allies like got this $15 minimum wage increase into the bill, and they argued that it was. I think it's that it was an infrastructure bill, and that infrastructure is, and this is true, infrastructure related items, I think, just need a simple majority. So like 51 votes, right? And it was like 50-50 at the time. Kamala Harris was the tiebreaker as the vice president. So there you go. And then, yeah, maybe I should look this up. Hold on. But yeah, it was determined the change could not be included in legislation handled through a one-party majority. Okay, it was determined by whom? Who did the determining? It was the parliamentarian, a bullshit position that holds no authority. It is a what do you call it? It's an advisory role where it's someone I believe appointed by the president, who offers kind of legal counsel almost on what can be done and can't be done through different like legislative mechanisms, right? So you have rules like this infrastructure simple majority thing, rather than a 60 vote threshold. And the parliamentarian determined that you can't put a minimum wage increase in an infrastructure bill. That just doesn't work. You're not allowed to do that. Okay. Now, what the president and the party should have said was, "That's nice. Goodbye," and then just done it anyway because the parliamentarian is bullshit. And really, they should get rid of the filibuster completely. But again, you're going to have two fucking senators who don't want to do it, and then they're just going to throw up their hands. All right. So here's what I'm going to do. I am going to need a bathroom break. So I'm going to self-indulge and play y'all a playlist of me videos. What's in this? Wait, I just want to see it. Shh. There's only three of those. Yeah, let's just do the commentary. Star Trek Socialism. Clips, shorts, commentary. Hey, welcome to Radicalize Me. Ooh, this is if you enjoy... I'm not gonna play that. I'm going to start here, where I think I started to get good. Communism is when no Halloween candy. There you go. Welcome to Radicalize Me. If you like what I do here, please throw me a good old thumbs up, comment, sub, whatever you got. And if you're able, I'd very much appreciate you keeping the channel going by subscribing on Patreon. This silly little, goofy little, silly image went semi-viral on Twitter recently. And I wanted to make a short little video talking about some of its inherent misconceptions. I don't make a lot of short videos on this channel. I enjoy making long, deep dive video essays, which is why I often go obscenely long without putting out a video. But I saw a teachable moment here, and I think we can have some fun with it. Also, if you're a fan of the long, in-depth videos, don't worry, one is on the way. So let's examine what's happening in this image. We've got this fella, this young whippersnapper, sitting outside his house, presumably, with a spread of Halloween candy. There's a big cooler with all these king-size Kit Kats, Snickers, all the best stuff on top, labeled capitalism, and a little basket with a bunch of little bullshit candies off to the side labeled socialism. So you can already see where this is going. He's making the argument that under capitalism, you get cool stuff and you get as much as you want. And under socialism, you get nothing. You get nothing! This is, of course, wrong. But I'm going to be as charitable as I can here because I've been told I can be a bit of a dick in these videos. And that's not entirely untrue. So I will say I don't hold it against this guy. And I'll try not to make this about him. Disinformation about socialism is everywhere, especially in the US. And consequently, many people don't understand what it really is. I myself didn't even really know what socialism was for most of my life. It's amazing what a little reading will do. So what's wrong with the candy metaphor here? For starters, this is a Halloween thing, right? So I assume he's not charging anyone for any of the candy. So that kind of breaks down right away. If this was a commerce situation, if he was selling it, patrons would have to pay for the candy under both systems, in most cases. You'd just pay a more fair price under socialism with an upper limit instead of it being subject to price gouging or prices so low that they rob the workers. Oh, and the chocolate wouldn't be harvested by child slaves, which is kind of neat. But let's look a little closer at these signs. Under capitalism, it says abundant choices, king size, eat until you're full. While under socialism, it says meh, fun size, and honestly, you'll be hungry. I'll take these one by one, or two by two, however you see it. Abundant choices versus meh. Now, there are 3 types of candy on the capitalism side. And that's fine. It's a good amount. But abundant is a strong term, right? We can't see inside the socialism basket very well, but it looks like it was filled from like a fun size variety pack kind of thing, right? And if that's true, there's probably more choices in the basket, even if they're small, you know? Where's my king-size Three Musketeers or Butterfinger or M&M's? Or damn, where's anything besides chocolate, right? I'm a gummy guy. Let's have some Sour Patch Kids, some Swedish Fish, some Mike and Ike. The 3 options he does have are fairly distinct, but even so, Twix and Kit Kats are both chocolate-covered wafer bars, and Snickers is just a candy bar with peanuts. So we're just not exactly brimming with variety, if that's going to be the argument. Additionally, some people on Twitter pointed out that both Twix and Snickers are made by the Mars Company, and Kit Kat is from Nestle. That's 2 companies offering 3 fairly similar products. Even if there were more options in this picture, most of the candy products you could think of are from one of these 2 companies. This point reminds me of another somewhat recent viral tweet where a guy tried to pull a gotcha on socialism. This one, where a guy went to a grocery store in Cuba and showed us how sad it is that they apparently only have one kind of all these different products. First of all, he has 4 close-cropped photos that really don't show us that much. And second, and I feel like this is obvious, he's showing us fully stocked shelves at a Cuban store. And this was when U.S. stores had tons of shortages because of the pandemic, which we still do in late October 2021 as I write this. And that's weird because I've been told a million times in my life that every single person in every socialist country just starves to death. It's wild that Cuba still somehow has people in it after 63 years of revolutionary government rule. King size versus fun size. This one is interesting. I don't think any culture or economic system is immune from feasting on tons of food when possible, right? Everyone loves to do that. But I do think that these sort of giant individual portions of one food item are kind of an American thing, especially today. You know, we love giant burgers, giant pizzas, giant steaks, giant sodas. The list goes on. But I think his point is that in addition to not enough options, socialist countries just don't have enough food in general. I'll be fair and say this has been true at times, right? This idea doesn't come from nowhere, but a lot, not all, but a lot of those resulted from blockades and sanctions against these countries, usually led by the U.S. Some of it was from failure of leadership. That happens everywhere. You know, I don't know if the Chinese famine under Mao was just from sanctions, for instance, you know, but there's really nothing about socialism or even the state capitalist attempts at socialism that we call socialism that just automatically makes a country collapse into famine and chaos. The U.S. has terrible problems with hunger for tens of millions and hundreds of thousands of unhoused people while homes sit empty. Yet the same people who rail against socialism because of apparent hunger in Cuba or China, both of which are at near zero homelessness, by the way, would never blame capitalism for the suffering people face in the U.S. because we've had it beaten into our heads for decades that we have a meritocracy, and any hardship you face is your own fault for not working harder. But here's the thing, capitalism does have inequality built into it. Capitalists need a hungry, insecure working class. Always have, always will. And they need to underpay those workers. Because why would you toil your life away making someone else rich without the threat of starvation? Eat until you're full versus you'll be hungry. Leaving aside the inadequate nutritional value of king-sized candy, I have to ask, who is he talking about? Who gets to eat until they're full? When people say things like this, they're either denying that people go hungry in America, or, like we talked about a minute ago, they just don't count it against capitalism because they consider it the fault of the hungry person. And also, like we already talked about, famine is not a feature of socialism, especially when it's not authoritarian. Look to Evo Morales of Bolivia, Salvador Allende of Chile, and Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso for a few examples. Hunger, and poverty in general for that matter, is a policy failure. That's not just a slogan. Sanctions are policy. Someone decided to do that. So yeah, you might go hungry under socialism because the US will prevent you from trading with the rest of the world, something every country on Earth relies on. The ongoing massive transfer of wealth from the working class to the rich in the US is policy. The US government offering little to no public housing as human beings with nowhere to go line the streets of every city, and then opting to instead send in police to destroy their belongings and push them out of the area, literally kicking the can down the road, is policy. All of this is to say that Halloween candy is really not the best way to teach kids the difference between socialism and capitalism. If we actually want kids to understand these ideologies, we should tell them the truth about them in school. Admittedly, I was never great at paying attention in school, but as far as I can remember, our lessons on socialism and communism were laughably oversimplified and probably not even accurate most of the time. First of all, we need to throw out the idea that socialism and authoritarianism are synonymous. Same goes for capitalism and democracy, or freedom. After the U.S. overthrew based Chad Democratic Socialist leader Salvador Allende in Chile, we installed Augusto Pinochet, fascist dictator and, say it with me, capitalist. The U.S. also played a large role in the military coup that ousted Evo Morales, president of Bolivia, from the Movement for Socialism Party in 2019, at which point the authoritarian neoliberal capitalist Janine Áñez became interim president because everyone above her in the line of succession resigned. By the way, about a year ago, Luis Arce, also from the Movement for Socialism, won the Bolivian presidential election. So Áñez can eat our collective shorts. Need I mention Mussolini and Hitler, who, contrary to popular belief, were not socialists? Or the business plot, a consortium of business leaders in 1933, including Prescott Bush, father of President George H.W. Bush and grandfather of President George W. Bush, who planned a coup to overthrow FDR and install a fascist dictator because they didn't like his mild social democratic reforms. Or the numerous fascist and genocidal actions of the U.S. government under multiple presidents over the past 245 years. But beyond the existence of capitalist authoritarianism, it would be nice if schools could teach kids more about communism than communism is when everybody gets the same. This is so not true, even in the idealized, hypothetical, fully realized version of communism. And the thing is, I remember learning the term from each according to his ability to each according to his need. So how do you say that and then say communism is when everyone gets the same? But all of that aside, the overarching problem here is the idea that socialism, and capitalism for that matter, is something that an individual does, rather than a way of organizing society and distributing resources. It's not really possible for a guy to demonstrate the differences between socialism and capitalism while sitting on his front lawn. It's certainly not with such a simple model. Again, he bought large and small candy, gave it all away, then presented that act as an explanation of both systems. And no hate, again, try not to be a dick, but it's just, it's too simple. It's just candy and then other candy. I'm a socialist, but that doesn't mean anything I do will be a socialist action. For one thing, I live in a capitalist country. I work for a corporation. I mostly use products from companies owned by capitalists. You know, if I start a business, I can maybe make it a worker co-op so it aligns more with my socialist values. I can give money to homeless people because I don't think they deserve to suffer. I can go out and advocate for my beliefs. But none of those things change the system we're living under. They're nice things to do, and I try to do them when I can, but no amount of good deeds can undo the ongoing damage done by capitalism. And before you say it, no, these facts of life do not make me a capitalist. First of all, participating in capitalism is not voluntary, and I'm not going to have that debate if anyone brings it up because it's not worth any time beyond the end of this sentence. Also, participating in capitalism doesn't make you a capitalist. Capitalists are people with capital, aka money. Enough money that they can throw it around on different business ventures and still get bailed out by the government if they fail. I am not one of these people, and odds are neither are you. You're probably a worker like me. Maybe a little better off, maybe worse off. But the capitalists don't care about that. They'd sell out any of us to make another dollar. Don't fight their battles for them. Also, stop trying to explain economics with random pictures of food. It's not working. Thanks for watching. Once again, if you enjoy my stuff, subscribe, give us a like, and consider supporting on Patreon. Bye now. Welcome to Radicalize Me. If you like what we do here, help us out with a like, comment, subscribe, and if you're feeling real passionate, you can even donate on Patreon. The philosopher David Bentley Hart once said that Americans are the most thoroughly and passively indoctrinated people on Earth. Since the Russian Revolution just over a century ago, United States news and entertainment media have trained Americans to fear anything even slightly reminiscent of socialism or communism, often used interchangeably, to support the military no matter what, and to believe the U.S. is the best country in the world. I came across an interesting example of this indoctrination when I visited my parents recently. Not from my parents, that's another conversation entirely, but on the first night I was there, we sat down to watch some TV, for old time's sake. I quickly vetoed Dr. Pimple Popper and the other gross medical oddity shows that apparently all retired people watch, and we settled on an 8-part CNN docuseries called History of the Sitcom. The series looks as far back as the 1950s, up to shows on the air today. Each episode had a theme related to common types of sitcoms and tropes: family, friends, sex and relationships, and so on. But naturally, the ones I was most interested in were Working for Laughs, which was about workplace sitcoms, and Moving On Up, or the social class episode. I also liked the race episode, Facing Race, which I'd recommend watching, but is not my area of expertise. Although, of course, racism and other social justice issues are inseparable from labor issues. Working for Laughs was the first episode I watched with my parents, and as the talking heads reminisced about sitcom depictions of work over the years, I noticed a narrative start to emerge. The early examples, of course, showed men, largely white, at work or leaving for work or coming home from work. I Love Lucy showed Ricky Ricardo, sometimes at work, sometimes at home. Same with Father Knows Best, Dick Van Dyke, Bob Newhart, and so on. But as time went on, every change in American work culture was reflected in the sitcoms of the day. The 60s saw the passage of the Civil Rights Acts, making life somewhat more navigable for black people, so We see successful black families on The Jeffersons and later The Cosby Show. More women entered the workforce in the 60s and 70s, so that's when you see Mary Tyler Moore and Murphy Brown do their thing, right? The financial crises of the 70s brought shows about struggling families like All in the Family, Sanford and Son, and Good Times. But almost any show you can think of stayed firmly within the accepted range of political opinions for the U.S., sometimes known as the Overton window. Sure, there's a challenge to the status quo in The Jeffersons showing a rich black family on TV in 1975, or The Mary Tyler Moore Show depicting a successful working woman in 1970. Or even showing a black family struggle on a show like Good Times was not always something you got to see. Hell, even The Honeymooners from 1955 was about a struggling working class family. But all of these shows and their contemporaries stop short of critiquing the system itself or proposing any solution beyond the individual success of the characters in the show. Even the financial crisis era shows rarely talk about how things could be different politically, opting to stay within the narrow spectrum of everything sucks for the family and the family gets a stroke of luck. Maybe you're thinking that I shouldn't expect anything more from US sitcoms, and that's fair. But we can still learn something from a closer look at how these shows do and don't talk about socialism and class politics. So here is part one of probably a two-part series. The 3 best sitcom depictions of socialism. Here's how I judged best. 1. Does any character mention socialism or communism? 2. Does any character correctly identify a socio-economic problem and at least imply an anti-capitalist solution? And 3. Are other characters receptive to these ideas? If not, which side is presented as reasonable? The first example is a decent Seinfeld episode from 1994 called The Race. I'll briefly explain this episode for anyone unfamiliar. Jerry... Hey. I'm back. Should I finish this? Let's finish this video. I'll pause for commentary. He is dating a woman named Lois, which is funny because, you see, he likes Superman.
Jimmy's in trouble, Lois.
Lois's boss is a guy who Jerry raced in high school. In that race, Jerry accidentally started running before the gym teacher said go, but denied it. The guy always suspected Jerry cheated and has been challenging him to a rematch for 20 years, but Jerry chooses not to run.
Because I choose not to run.
Boomer comedy. What are you going to do? Meanwhile, Elaine is dating a communist named Ned, and they order a lot of delivery from this racist caricature of a Chinese person. Kramer and Mickey work as a mall Santa. One thing that's worth noting is the guy, Ned, that Elaine's dating is very much a Trotskyist. They kind of snuck that in under the radar, but the way he she compares the way he dresses to Trotsky, and he was like, good. And then he later tries to sell literature to Kramer. It's great. So I'm pretty sure he's a Trotskyist. I don't have anything against Trotsky. This is a whole can of worms, but like I got a lot of my political education from Trotskyists, and I am on a podcast called The Left Opposition, which is mostly with my Trotskyist friends. I don't know if I consider myself a Trotskyist. I do like Trotsky's writing that I've read, but I don't think that like the hate that Trotskyists get is really like all that warranted. That's just my thoughts. And an elf, respectively. Ned converts Kramer to communism, and Kramer starts preaching on the job. Mickey and this kid, hate communism. Also, Steinbrenner sends George to Cuba to negotiate with Castro and get Cuban baseball players signed to the Yankees, because apparently that's how that works. Overall, I think this episode was just meant to be a lighthearted take on communism and the fall of the Soviet Union, which is generally Seinfeld's MO. The show and the guy both tend to avoid being explicitly political. But based on this episode, I can't help but think Jerry and Larry David were at least a little sympathetic to communism, or at least had a couple of writers in the room who were. I say this because the communist characters in the episode, Ned, Kramer, and apparently Lois.
He's going to fire me.
But he can't do that.
Yes, he can. He controls the means of production.
Are the only ones who make anything resembling coherent arguments. The arguments are definitely played for laughs, but that is what you do when you're trying to sneak real political points into comedy. So again, while I probably wouldn't say the show is explicitly pro-communism, it is interesting that characters make these communist statements that just hang in the air, and no character ever makes a counter-argument. The most we get is Mickey and the kid at the mall getting angry when it's mentioned. Otherwise, all the jokes made at the communists' expense are ridiculous to the point of absurdity. Like Ned insists on only wearing drab clothing. It's kind of funny, but if they really wanted to ridicule communists, they could have at least made him insist on only wearing union-made clothing or only stuff made from sustainably sourced material and just present that as the annoying trait. From purely a comedy writer's perspective, I'm glad they avoided the cliche, but when I examine it further, I think the way they wrote this belies a more sympathetic or at least more playful relationship to the topic. Another example of this absurdity is Kramer explaining how there would be no delis under communism because the different meats are like social classes.
There are no delicatessens under communism.
Why not?
Because the meats are divided into a class system. You got pastrami and corned beef in one class and salami and bologna in another.
So you can't get corned beef?
Well, you know, if you're in the Politburo, maybe.
I could see some Ben Shapiro type maybe actually saying this seriously today. But again, as part of a Seinfeld episode, it doesn't even come across as a criticism, and they're clearly just fucking around. Meanwhile, what we do see is Ned competently explain to Kramer that his employer is abusing him, and talk about the U.S. blacklisting of communists in the 1950s, which his father experienced firsthand.
When my father was blacklisted, he couldn't work for years.
Kramer tells one of the kids he meets as Santa that the toy he wants for Christmas is made by child sweatshop laborers.
I want a racing car set.
Listen, you don't want that. Those are assembled in Taiwan by kids like you.
This guy's a commie!
Well, that's enough, Pinko. You're through!
That's true of a lot of products sold in the U.S., and this fervently anti-communist child has nothing to say besides, this guy's a commie. And if this line is any indication, Lois has a decent grasp on the market. Yeah, it's telling. It's just like real life. When you explain something like sweatshop labor, which is why companies outsource to places like, I guess, Taiwan. People scream at you for being a communist. And sure, you can say, like, people don't understand what communism is. And that's true, but, like, sometimes they do. And, like, outlawing that kind of outsourced exploitive labor is communist. Like, that is what communists want. It's very telling that that gets people angry. Like, what? You want me to not point it out? You want me to not say that? You want me to not strive for that? Fucker. Marxist critique of capitalism.
He controls the means of production.
To go back to our list of criteria, does any character mention socialism or communism? Yes, this episode has characters talk openly about communism.
This is Ned. He's a communist.
Does any character correctly identify a socioeconomic problem and at least imply an anti-capitalist solution? Ned points out that the mall is underpaying and overworking Kramer and Mickey.
You know the Santas at Bloomfields are making double what you are? When you get a rash all over your face in January, you think Coleman's will be there with a medical plan? Kramer, I've got some literature in my car that will change your whole way of thinking.
Talk to me, baby.
Listen to him, Kramer. You got a good job here.
There's just no way you could have beaten me by that much.
Kramer mentions child sweatshop labor. I caught that part too late. I guess I didn't notice while I was editing. Just goes into the next scene. You see like the YouTube player.
Kramer, you got a good job here.
There's just no way you could have beaten me by that much.
Kramer mentions child sweatshop labor in third world countries, and Lois uses the language of Karl Marx to describe her boss's authority. Are other characters receptive to these ideas? If not, which side is presented as reasonable? True to Seinfeld, Jerry is unbothered.
A communist, that's something.
Elaine just has a morbid curiosity.
Oh, whoa, a commie.
George embraces communism for self-serving reasons.
The Daily Worker has personals?
Yeah, and they say that appearance is not important.
Yours or hers?
And Kramer fully buys into the ideology. Ned is presented as a level-headed, principled person who knows what he's talking about. Kramer is presented as, well, insane because he's Kramer, but nothing he says is incorrect. Mostly. Anti-communists, like the kid at the mall and Kramer's boss, are presented as paranoid and overreacting. While Lois's boss doesn't talk about communism, he is presented as unreasonable and unfair, threatening to fire her if Jerry won't race him. This fits pretty neatly into the episode's running theme about labor rights. Second on our list is Aliens, a 1992 episode of Roseanne. If you're any younger than I am, you might not have been aware of Roseanne during its original run, and it's possible you only know Roseanne Barr herself as the aging, racist, Trump-supporting comedian who had a horrendous downfall a few years ago during the short-lived revival of her show. Honestly, she's probably in serious need of mental health care that I hope she's getting, and while it's unlikely, I also hope she's no longer racist. However, back in 1988, she had a show with pretty based working-class politics. As far as I know, Roseanne was a pretty revolutionary show at this time. If we look at the other sitcoms on the air in 1988, they're all about middle-class or rich families. Cosby Show, upper middle class. Golden Girls, middle class and rich. Who's the Boss? Rich. Dear John, rich people. Growing Pains, upper middle class to rich. Wonder Years, middle class. I could go on. But Roseanne the person seemed to make a very conscious choice to center her show on a struggling working-class family in the fictional town of Lanford, Illinois. And the show doesn't just give you a vague sense of, oh, times are hard. It illustrates the inescapable, compounding nature of poverty in America. The Connor family doesn't simply support each other through the bad days. Yeah, this is so important because that is the only way you see poverty a lot of the time on, like, especially on sitcoms, TV shows, is that it's like a sort of background set piece, or like it's something the characters encounter briefly, for themselves, or like they, the kids on Seventh Heaven meet a homeless kid or something, whatever the fuck. So it's so important that Roseanne was a show about a struggling working class family. Though that element certainly exists, they bump up against the system in a way rarely shown on TV at that time and even now. A great example of the show's attempts to fully pit the system against this family comes in this scene from the episode Aliens. The only context you need here is that Roseanne's husband, Dan, just got a call from the bank because he's late on the loan payment for his motorcycle mechanic shop. This is such a good scene. Just fucking incredible. Roseanne's about to lose her job, and then there's a knock at the door.
Hi, I'm Mike Summers, your state representative. How you doing?
Already, this scene is perfect. We never find out what party he is, but the smug fuck strutting in with his slim fit outfit and the jacket over the shoulder. He could easily be a young, shitty Democratic Party pretty boy upstart like Beto O'Rourke or Pete Buttigieg, or a young, shitty Republican Party pretty boy upstart like Marco Rubio or Tom Cotton. This guy would definitely have campaign ads on TV where he's on some staged factory tour with his sleeves rolled up and a hard hat on. God, I hate him.
Great.
Good. I'm going door to door trying to get to know my constituents.
Door to door, huh? Why don't you just go down to the unemployment office and see everybody at once?
I'm not really a filmmaker, so I don't do much technical critique, but I know enough to know when a scene is staged well. His posture is so on point, and then Roseanne stands there with her arms crossed and just the right amount of attitude. So Summers tells Roseanne that he's aware of rising unemployment, and that bringing in new business is his number one priority so that Lanford's workforce doesn't lay idle. Roseanne isn't buying it.
We're going to make it cheaper for out-of-state businesses to set up shop right here in Lanford.
Well, who's going to pay the taxes that they ain't paying?
Well, you will, but you'll be working.
This has been the U.S. government's go-to lie since Reagan was in office, and we're still hearing it from both parties today. Tax incentives, of course, are just a way for corporations to further maximize profit at the expense of American workers, who they lock into poverty and wage slavery. But I'll let Roseanne explain.
Union wages?
Well, now...
So they're going to dump the union so they can come here and hire us at scab wages, and then for that privilege, we get to pay their taxes.
Is your husband home?
Let's make an official judgment. Does any character mention socialism or communism? It's perfect, right? You gotta admit, that's a fucking perfect scene. Strangely, no. But given the time period and that the show was set and created in the U.S., it makes sense that the working class Connor family would have some kind of class consciousness while not espousing socialism by name. This manifests as Roseanne calling out the state reps' pro-corporate, anti-worker policies and inquiring about union wages. Does any character correctly identify a socioeconomic problem and at least imply an anti-capitalist solution? Yes. Roseanne has a solid understanding of the scheme at play, where the politicians literally shift the tax burden from corporations and the rich to the working class. She also, again, reveals her union support in this conversation. You could go full communist and argue that unions aren't quite anti-capitalist because they're kind of just a necessity under capitalism and don't fundamentally alter the employer-employee relationship. But I'll say this, capitalists sure don't like them. And we got to start somewhere. And later in the episode, Roseanne also literally chases Rep Summers out of her husband's shop in an attempt to continue talking his ear off. This is an indication of her desire to take politics into her own hands by scaring elected leaders into action. She wants to make his life hell until and unless he commits to doing better. That ain't liberal shit. Are other characters receptive to these ideas? If not, which side is presented as reasonable? Summers is the only one who rejects Roseanne's ideas in this episode, but he is 100% portrayed as the villain. In fact, his inclusion in the episode comes across as purely an excuse to have Roseanne sound off about the plight of the working class. His presence led to two funny scenes, and it's connected to their money troubles in the episode, but they easily could have just made an episode about the Connors' money problems with a bunch of jokes and call it a day. Roseanne doesn't really talk politics with anyone else in this episode, but it's important that they didn't have any characters try to talk her down at any point, besides Summers, of course. It's especially noteworthy that her husband, Dan, doesn't talk her down at all. Like, hey, come on, he's an important guy. Don't you think you're being a little unreasonable? Which is, I think, what most sitcoms would probably do if they even allowed a woman to talk shit to a state rep at all, right? It's amazing what happens when you actually let women produce, star in, and write shows. The last positive example, at least on this list, is from a 2002 Bernie Mac Show episode called Mac Local 137. The Bernie Mac Show starred the late great comedian Bernie Mac, known for his stand-up and film roles such as in the original Kings of Comedy, Friday, and Ocean's 11. The premise of the show is that when Bernie's sister in Chicago enters a drug rehab facility, she needs to send her kids, Vanessa, Jordan, and Brianna, to live with Bernie and his wife in Beverly Hills. As the title suggests, he plays a fictionalized version of himself. In the Season 2 episode, Mac Local 137, Bernie notices his yard in disarray, including the grass, flower beds, and the fence, and realizes these are the results of his nibblings playing, perhaps a bit carelessly. Bernie is understandably annoyed and tells the kids they have to clean up the yard. However, when they find out they won't be getting extra allowance for the extra work, they go on strike. At first, I was going to say this is not a perfect metaphor because we're talking about kids and their guardian, in this case their uncle, and the dynamics are different from a workplace. However, Vanessa does make an important point about the extra allowance.
Jordan and Brianna are goofing off. I should get more money.
What money?
The extra allowance for extra work.
Extra money!
I don't think it falls under child labor to make your kids do chores, but if you establish in your house that the kids will do certain chores for a certain amount of money, then extra chores should mean extra money, even if it's to clean up their own mess or whatever. I say this not just because I'm me and I don't think the nuclear family unit should enforce the employer-employee dynamic in the way school and fucking everything else does in a kid's life, but because capitalist-minded parents like Bernie Mac's eponymously named character claim that they want their kids to understand the value of a dollar and know how to put in a hard day's work. If he wanted to teach his nibblings how to work, he should teach them how to properly value and take pride in their work, not just how to accept abuse from their employers. No job can legally make you do anything off the clock, especially if you're paid hourly. I don't know the personal political views Bernie Mac himself held in life, but I certainly question the motives of the character for dismissing Vanessa's reasonable argument and then having a slave driver fantasy that does not hold up well, in which he forces the kids to work at gunpoint. Sadly, I fear that this scene might have been an attempt to reach racist white suburbanites and middle Americans who only respect black people who have the same fucked up oppressive values they do. Now, perhaps I've overindulged in conjecture, but these contradictions also make me doubt the real-life suburbanites who would likely go a similar route as Bernie did in this episode if they were in the same position, but who might couch their decision in more of this teaching my kids the value of labor bullshit. Of course, these are usually the same suburban parents who then go on to use their connections to get their kids into all the best schools and internships that'll fast-track them into high-paying jobs and positions of power so they can continue this cycle of abusing their kids and looking down on manual laborers and poor people in general. But I digress. What's interesting about the Bernie Mac episode is he's fully on. That's the people I grew up with. and I was that person to an extent. Like that is the attitude of my parents in a lot of ways, but they also weren't like super well connected, like, you know, people with connections to power and stuff. And I was a terrible student, so couldn't get those jobs if I wanted to. Honest about his intentions and interests from the beginning. He is full capitalist from the jump and doesn't care who knows. The episode starts, as most do, with Bernie giving his confessional/exposition to the audience, but this time he's reading the newspaper. He comments on how bad the stock market was at that time.
This year I got killed in the stock market.
I don't know a whole lot about it, but the market downturn of 2002 was bad enough that it has its own Wikipedia page. I was around then, but I was more interested in the Bush administration's war crimes. Teenage boys, right? By the end of the episode, Bernie levels with Vanessa and explains that he just wants the best for her. He also points out how much he gives her in terms of her basic needs and wants just because she's part of his family, and all he asks is that she contribute a bit. Classic sitcom shit. This scene serves to soften Bernie as a character and his relationship with his niece, but it also addresses my first point that the dynamics in a family unit are different from a traditional employer-employee relationship. Ultimately, this scene is fine. Again, I don't think it's wrong to ask your kid to do some chores, but I wish it had made clearer that Bernie provides for his nibblings because it's the right thing to do, not conditionally as long as they do housework. I'm sure he would always provide for them and wouldn't let them starve because they messed up the lawn. But I wonder whether focusing more on the virtue of taking care of each other rather than the virtue of working yourself to death might make it easier for people to scale up the idea of caring to the rest of society. Maybe Americans wouldn't be so goddamn scared of Medicare for all if our media promoted the idea of general welfare as a human right. It's in the Constitution.
Hey, Editing Joe here. I'm aware that there's a lot of debate over what that general welfare thing in the, not only the preamble, but in the 10th Amendment itself, I believe, means by general welfare. I'm not super interested in having that debate, but I know that it's debated. So, feel free to comment whatever you like, but I will probably not respond, except to say now that I think that this probably does allow the government to do some healthcare stuff.
I just heard that and thought, are there any comments? They never got back with a suggestion. 7 comments. Oh my god. Oh my god, this is amazing. I didn't notice this. I remember this comment. Karl Marx was a straight white male. Okay. He said it again here, and then again here, and said called them a libtard. And it's interesting that he's doing this Karl Marx as a straight white male thing when he's calling the only visibly female person a libtard, while just saying it matter-of-factly to myself and this person with a male, generally male first name. That's cool. But anyway, no one commented about that, which is good. I'm glad they didn't.
And even if it doesn't, I think that would be a generally good idea. And if our Constitution prevents us from enacting good things, it's not the craziest idea to think about changing the Constitution. Other countries do that sometimes, and if our Constitution is actively making life worse for many people, that might be one of those times. Okay, back to the video.
Let's make our judgment. Does any character mention socialism or communism? Not by name, but interestingly, the Bernie Mac show was the only one so far to mention capitalism. Bernie praises capitalism by name, and the show then pits the kids in opposition to capitalism by engaging in labor action. And while just having labor unions under the current capital-owning model is not itself socialism, you can thank socialists and communists for making unions a possibility. Does any character correctly identify a socioeconomic problem and at least imply an anti-capitalist solution? Yes. The kids, or Vanessa at least, have a solid understanding of the contradictions at play in their arrangement with Bernie. If a certain amount of work gets them a certain amount of pay, more work should get them more pay. And Vanessa understood that the kids would have to stand together and go on strike in order to get fairly compensated. Once again, a lot of well-meaning liberals will tell you that, well, labor rights aren't anti-capitalist. It's just fair. That's how capitalism's supposed to work. Bullshit. The capitalists want it all every time, and they'd step over your dead body for just a little bit more of it. Was I a little intense there? People. It's called capitalism, They are in the fucking name, not you. Are other characters receptive to these ideas? If not, which side is presented as reasonable? The fact that Bernie's wife sits him and Vanessa down to negotiate not only demonstrates a very positive and supportive relationship with her niece, but it's an analog for a positive view of labor rights. While children need guidance from their parents or parental stand-ins, it's good to give them some agency and take their concerns seriously. And while workers benefit from certain amounts of direction and structure or management, we are entitled to ownership of the means of production. And if it is not given to us, we must take it. As Chairman Mao said, change must come through the barrel. Ultimately, Bernie is not presented as particularly reasonable. Neither is Vanessa, and I might be inclined to call this a cop-out. But to be charitable, I think the point of the episode was that family members should try not to be at odds in this way, even if it makes sense in a labor setting. That's all for this video. Can you think of any other positive portrayals of socialism and or communism in sitcoms? Let me know in the comments. And stay tuned for the next video in this little mini-series where we'll look at the 3 worst portrayals. Donate on Patreon to get early access and keep the channel going. Thanks for watching. Bye now. Well, chat. I think I'm gonna call it there for today. Yeah. Yeah, it's been good. I think not as many viewers today. That's okay. But we'll keep going. Last week I was out of town, didn't stream, but other than that, we've been going every Sunday. All right. We're going to keep trying to make that happen. I'm trying to set up a an interview with someone from the Workers' Party of Massachusetts. There is an interview with a couple of the guys who were running for office on that ticket on my YouTube. But there was another interview I did with a third guy that vanished off the face of the earth. Can't find where it is. Don't know where the file is. Can't see if I uploaded it anywhere. So just going to redo that. Yeah, Workers' Party of Massachusetts. Go look up Andrew Nelson. I'm going to try to have him on, and we'll probably do that as a stream and then put it up on YouTube. Okay. All right. That's it for today. Thanks for watching, and see ya next time.